Hi, Leila.
Hi, Kat.
It is great to see you. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. Today I had a good rest on the shore. I live right here by the beach. I moved just before the lockdown and in an act of astonishing timing. And so, yeah, at this point, I've got this incredible resource for my eyes and for my body. So I went and got close to the water and
Oh, wonderful. Oh, gosh, that sounds perfect. And hopefully, we're going to be joined by lovely movers who are on their retreat. We've had a little weekend off the lives, but they've all been doing practices.
great.
Um, And today was your radical creativity class. Now, the reason why in the journal and in the class we put this here is that we thought, well, it's all very well doing, the retreat with self-inquiry and doing the yoga practices, but actually what we need is right now, we all need to sort of think a little bit differently to how we did before, to get a bit more creative about life, because we're going to be at some point back to life, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And how do we have this conversation about how can we support each other to think about life a bit differently?
Yeah.
And that is where I'd love to hear your background to the radical creativity class, because it was flipping fabulous, but it really took me places I didn't expect to go.
Hi, I want to say hi to everyone because I see that people are typing in and hello and thanks so much for coming. I had been not so long before that class. I'd been in Los Angeles and with one of my teachers, who's a wonderful kind of luminous teacher called Hala Khoury. Hala Khoury, Khouri, Hala, Hala. And Hala she's a psychotherapist and a trauma specialist, and really focuses her work on liberative justice. She's one of the co-founders of Off the Mat and Into the World, which is a great educational body. So she's really committed to social justice. Anyway, she's got a lot of she knows quite a lot about the workings of the nervous system. And I was very inspired by these she had us doing some movements that were kind of asymmetrical and slightly difficult to do. And also like a little bit different, like kind of similar to things that you might do in yoga, but actually different things. And so that she was talking about neural repatterning and about sort of, just sort of how the brain functions. And so I kind of was inspired by that. And that's how I kind of went about constructing that class.
Interesting.
Now I'm doing something that's very like similar but different. I'll have to get some of those in the can. These liquid awareness classes that I'm doing now are very much about kind of allowing for quite a lot of real direct expression. Because I'm pretty convinced that the body, I'm very, very, very committed to and convinced that the body's hyper intelligence, and of the kind of fundamental creative intelligence that the body wisdom actually is. And this is like an understanding that's based not only on, my studies of anatomy, physiology, and all of those things, but really on, even like the tantric yoga and kind of the whole kind of map of my studentship base is about this. So I'm really interested in how did poses come to be? I mean, a pose is a flash of insight, isn't it? I mean, that's really what an asana is, right? It's some flash of insight in practice that then gets codified and worked and reworked through the bodies in the living tradition, through the teaching lineages and throughout time and space. And so I'm very interested in how we can open a practice of asana, of the flash of insight for now, and then as those flashes of insight bring forward kind of various healing energies to our individual body world, then how does holding the space of a flash of insight kind of open in a certain sense, or remaining integrated to the prospect of what that flash kind of engenders inside you, then how does that bring forth collective change and collective reimagining?
Wow. That is exactly on topic for what I was wanting to ask about. But I didn't have those words. And I didn't have, the thing is, I'm just sort of learning this. Yeah, Emma Miranda Smith, I like the sound of that. I do too. I really like the sound of being able to work with our inspiration and work with our insight in our bodies. How are ways that people might be able to, how do we start to do this?
Well, I think the first thing I think there's a few different things. From my perspective as an educator, I'm constantly inviting people to open themselves to the process, open themselves to unknowing in such a way that their own personal sovereign knowledge can come forward. And now I'm situated in a very, in a certain sense, awkward, also very kind of charged position. I'm a non-Indian, just to name my social location. I'm a non-Indian, non-white. I'm a non-Indian woman of color, and I'm teaching an art form, a spiritual technology and an art form that is very fraught in as much as it is very charged with its colonial legacy and the way that it comes through into this current world that I teach in, which is usually a very white-centered wellness world. It's a tradition that is like on the kind of broad scale only now. It's been a minority of teachers who are teaching specifically about that colonial legacy and having people to kind of really come into understanding. I know that you're going to be talking to Nadia later this week, and she knows a lot about this. And this is a very important, I think, part of our lineage studying as yogins, contemporary yogins. So I'm not Indian, but I'm also not white, and I'm also very dedicated to spiritual practices, and also initiated to kind of other healing arts. And so in this kind of position that I hold, I find myself in a critique in both a wanting to work with all of the lineages and be in a real deep honoring of them, but also really encourage people to be in the pulse of their own extremely sensitive awakening. So the first thing would be like, okay, can we decide that our yoga practice is about both individual and collective awakening? I think that if you're willing to open to that prospect and really say, actually, that's the thing that we're really doing here, and kind of commit to it. And even if you don't kind of know what that means, but you can just feel the pulse of the truth of that then it becomes, you're kind of setting the stage for your practice to be much more of an exploration, much more of an experiment, and also much more of a laboratory for what individual and collective awakening actually are. And one of the things that has come down through, it's like a real mess between the kind of global patriarchy, it's a global patriarchy, and a kind of global kind of habit of gaslighting through both patriarchy and also through white supremacy. I think that there is this, that there's like and the way we've been educated, and this is in the way that we've been educated at every level, not just in yoga education. So this is like, then we must recognize that we've been used to kind of self-gaslighting, denying the truth of our own experience. So I'm like, okay, well, how can we reclaim the truth of our own experience? And also without some kind of egoic, and now this means I'm that now I have some authority over somebody else. That we can be in the power of our own experience and in that embodied truth, and keep tracking the way that truth is always an evolving edge. And so these are the sorts of things that preoccupy me as a teacher, and supporting people and anchoring to me, creativity is very close to sovereignty. It's very close to sovereignty.
So by that, it's like coming into your own personal power, and then creativity and its expression of that. Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: what's not okay to do in a yoga class for you? What would not be okay? Not for you. I'm not asking you personally. It's like a kind of it's a rhetorical question. But what would be okay? Like what movement is like kind of not okay? And then if we say, like, if we make it okay, if we just say, like, we're going to make that movement okay, then And that suddenly is on the map of possibilities. If we start to put everything on the map, there's a lot of yoga that's very performative. I mean, we're speaking now, I want to just name that we're speaking now, not just about the kind of, lockdown and creativity and this particular moment of collective awakening around depression, which is how I see this moment. Mm-hmm. But we're also just speaking about like, what is the relationship between creativity and the practice of the asanas and the practice of yoga? I mean, I sit and have daily sadhana, and I've been a long time advocate of a sovereign daily personal practice that is your practice, that is your daily commitment practice, then, and not being sort of reliant upon external anything to kind of motivate that. Although you want to be in community to support you in that, that's a little bit different than kind of having kind of somebody telling you that that's the thing, or some liminal connection, something like this. Anyway, sorry, I'm speaking now, just going off topic. I kind of feel like if we're talking about how do we access creativity, particularly in terms of movement and asana practice, the kind of on the mat, then it's things like what isn't okay. In what ways is my asana a kind of performative gesturing and not an actual self-expression?
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think for a lot of folks who are especially a little bit newer to yoga, it's sort of we want to learn the poses, we want to get good at doing the poses, because these are the poses which our teacher have taught us. So we want to be able to master Bakasana, or another pose that we might find physically challenging. And that's kind of, for a lot of us, it's a gateway and is maybe where we are with our yoga. So seeing it as something that's coming into ourselves is pretty radical in and of itself, Leila.
Yeah, I concur. I see how radical it is, because I've been, there teaching, I've been a kind of weekly jobbing yoga. Yeah, it's easier. Somebody's just mentioned that in home practice, we sidestep the performance aspect. I say yes, and maybe not, because it depends on how deeply encoded performance is into your body world. Just because nobody else is watching doesn't mean that you don't have that idealized version of pose or self or body that you're not matching yourself up against. And this to me is how, like, this is the kind of moment, this is the way that, like, you can see oppression kind of fundamentally just expressed in your own experience. Because as people take on ideals from culture,
right,
then this is a way that those ideals are encoded.
they're internalized. Yeah,
we internalize these encoded, heavily, densely encoded kind of ideas about how we're supposed to be.
Interesting. I think that's I can see where Emma's coming from, because in a way, when I go to the big studios or something and I'm in a big class, I'm very aware that people are looking, and people, there's that thing, isn't there? You can you're seeing what other people are doing on the mat. And I mean, I found that a bit torturous, which is one of the reasons why I do like to practice at home. But it's an interesting point that we have internalized that view that other people have of us. And I hadn't realized that, Leila. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher, I feel that is present. I mean, because a lot of my classes now, I see everybody's at home, and I ask them to come on the video so I can see. And I'm watching Zoom classes, and I can see some people are really just like, they're really kind of like much more interested in the direct truth of their experience and on the prospect of revelation, which is really, nobody can give you the formula for your own revelation. Can they? It's not like I can say, like, you do this, this, and this, and then bang, revelation.
Oh, such a shame. But it's interesting as well that we've gone here already, because a really big part of this home retreat, as opposed to the others, is this practice of discernment in which is your second practice of the day. Because in all the other retreats, we've given 2 practices, whereas in this one, we're like, you decide your second practice.
Yeah.
And that's actually really hard for a lot of people. I mean, for me, it's a struggle. Like if somebody says, oh, I've been doing this, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I'll do that. And all it takes is that little bit of suggestion. But being able to really check in and say, what is right for me? And taking on board who we really are in that sovereignty thing. That's a hard one.
Yeah, that definitely feeling, and then it's very revealing, isn't it? Like how willing we are to trust our instincts. I mean, another piece, like I see this in multiple layers, right? On one hand, there's the layer of like activating our sovereignty and wanting to be and to really be able to feel in and attune like where we belong and what we need to be doing right now. And that's like, this is all like a big part of my teaching in general, my entire teaching, but my teaching ministry. But there's the other piece of like how we need mirrors and how sometimes like if we start to open out put more possibilities on the table, like for example, I don't know what to do right now. And then maybe I can turn to community and not say, what should I do? But actually say, who needs help? So let me dedicate this time to someone else who needs help because I'm not sure what to do. And then suddenly if we get somebody else saying, oh, I need help. Like I'm sad today. Then you think, all right, I'm going to do a practice to support this person in their sadness. It's like, okay, well, so now just being in community can start to help us and inform, what we need to do, and this is really, we have an incredible amount of, at the very least, informational connection to other people. It's not quite the same thing as being in the room, but we certainly are present to so many different lived realities through the social media channels, through something like this retreat, so many different realities. How can these realities support us in deepening our sovereign relationship with both ourselves and also the web matrix of life that we are inevitably, utterly, not just a part of, but that we actually are?
I love that. That in fact, here we are, everybody, on our retreat. We are each other. Yeah. So part of it is, and we've had some quite interesting comments of late, people who are struggling a little bit with, coming out of lockdown and things like this. And there has been, a lot of people for various reasons in struggle. And actually just seeing other people stepping up to that is lovely, because maybe that gives everybody a little role, I suppose. That's what we can do, is support.
Yeah. Support one another, dedicate to one another, recognize that, it's like that. To me, one of the paradoxes of sovereignty is exactly that. It's that that we've been sold in a lot, so many things to say just about lockdown and capitalism and all these different kind of things that to me are just intimate with spiritual practice in every single regard. But basically that we've been sold a version of sovereignty that is just simply individualism, and that this is insufficient. It's very insufficient, and we're going to, and how do we live not just the individual dream, but the collective dream? How do we live into, how do we use our time to reimagine, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else? I did this event recently called Unify and Prosper. And it was a manifestation spell. You guys, anybody who doesn't know, I can just tell you, I'm also, among other things, a priestess and a practicing witch. I have a deep spiritual practice that's elemental and based in ritual. And I called a circle, and we had 80 or 90 people, all doing their practices. And we didn't name it. It's a manifestation. So manifesting prosperity. I mean, this is a very popular theme, right? So. But we made it collective prosperity. It's amazing how different that is. Like how about it's not self-care, but collective care?
Right.
And that shift, I think, is one of the things that's super vital. And I actually think it's super vital in order to keep creativity alive. Because it's like we're not actually. There is, I mean, the truth that we're not separate is just like a fundamental. It's just no matter how we feel. That's just, we can just, maybe all of us at this point can just be like, yeah, that's true. You know, what Thich Nhat Hanh said about interbeing is just, we can just accept that as truth. I think it's just so plainly true. And it's so many.
Can you remind us, what did he say about this?
Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, described the interconnectedness of everything, the kind of oneness of all things as interbeing. And interbeing is, I think he says, like, can you see the cloud in this piece of paper? And he was like, well, in order for the tree to grow, the cloud had to rain on the tree. You know, it's like this kind of, and you see, like, there is no point of separation in this intricate web of being. And he says it's not true that we inter-are, you know. So our language doesn't reflect, nothing in our life reflects this, I think. But we're learning how to reimagine, how to speak a way that reflects it, to love in ways that reflect that truth. You know?
Well, I'm absolutely fascinated, because it's so much broader. It's so much bigger than what I had imagined. So when I wrote our little workbook, it was sort of like, how can we reimagine our lives and society as a whole? Because obviously we need society to do the things so that we can do the things, but actually having that complete interdependence as part of our creative reimagining.
I think it's really vital. We had an astonishing time with this event. You know, we had a week of people just doing, what we did was we built a web on our altar. We made an altar, each of us, all 90 of us, or whatever. And we actually made a web, and then we offered gifts to the web every day and had different practices around this web. And then the idea was that then when we came together, we only had 2 calls together. I mean, it wasn't a huge kind of elaborate event. It wasn't a big retreat like this, but the sense of being connected to one another. And then finally, the last thing we did was we just offered gifts to each other. And offer it. And then we also said, like, if you need to receive, then I invite you to open up. And it was amazing what happened. It became this astonishing exchange of, and people, I mean, there were people who've had complete kind of, I want to say, career rewrites, or this kind of total birthing of a new vision. But because we did it within a web setting, like, if it hadn't been for the fact that it was a web and that we were all together, no one person would have had this. Yeah. Somebody's asking if this is an aspect of shamanism. This is, for me, I'm partnered in the Vessel of Worth work, which is one of my teaching ministries, with a woman who is a shaman. But I'm priestess would be more the kind of way I would describe my role as a teacher and facilitator. I'm through the priestess lineage of these lands. I live in the UK. And have ancestry also from this part of the world as well. And so I'm living into those threads. But there was a shaman involved. And there's a lot of connections between shamanic practice and priestess practice and Wiccan practice and Druidic practice, and all these things kind of have different relationships, correlations.
How does it tie into yoga?
Well, I mean, I think, I have a very kind of wide open relationship with all of this. For me, I think the piece, it's like the thing that yoga is for me, the point of yoga is awakening, is embodied awakening. Yeah. And so, this is the same goal through all the different practices that I'm a part of. So, it's like, I certainly don't see the goal of yoga as like to feel better or to like increase my well-being or any of this kind of thing, like, I don't mind how it's not a longevity practice,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then
that is one of the understandings, one of the teachings that I'm getting through the kind of like critique in the cultural appropriation is, and something I've always done in my own training, is to remind people that is what the roots, that is what this practice is really about. And one of the ways that we bleach it, is by extracting that power out of it and just deciding like an exercise or something like that, which I think is a name.
So basically we're making it into a gym class. That's kind of for, yeah, okay.
That is a form of cultural appropriation that I think now is really being named. It's not just, okay, we're gonna now, it's okay to not be spiritual and do yoga. It's not that. That's not what it's about. It's about just really honoring what this actually is, what the thing is that it comes from, and recognizing that this is not some isolated thing where we can cherry pick exactly what we want. Sorry, the screen just started to, because I hadn't touched this mouse pad probably. That it's not just something that we can just extract what we like or what we find palatable, I think is another thing that's not challenging to our worldview. And just plug it into our world. I think it's about, recognizing the wider context and making some commitments.
Now, I like the idea of making the commitments, Leila, because I know that I have committed to part of this process of self-inquiry on the retreat is to find ways to continue after this finishes, and to be able to commit to this learning, to be able to commit to the practices that are going to help me. And awaken, I suppose, isn't a word that I use very much, but it's a word which resonates because I just want to make the conscious choices that will make, elevate things a little. So we're not all sort of just thinking about what we're going to get from Tesco. There's more.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I'd say the first stage of reality is that you get liftoff out of transactional reality and into a more clear understanding of reality, or clearer relationship in reality, which of course is beyond, reality is more than just transaction. I think part of creative living, like true creative living, true accessing of the power of the yoga practices and really kind of putting the rubber in the road of yoga is to live in the full dynamic process of life, to live as the full dynamic process of life. And it's way more than it's way more than transaction and function. It's much, much more dynamic and alive and wild and exquisite than that. And yeah, I'm very committed to living in exquisiteness.
I love that. So yeah, the ways that we could make those commitments. Can you sort of suggest ways that I'm certainly a starter at all of this?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing I'm not alone. There'll be another person who's also a starter.
Yeah.
How can we make a start?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is to awaken to the context of your own life. And to all of the stuff. To be frank, what I would say is the most activated means into spiritual practice that I can perceive at this time is to really begin to critique, is to become aware of your privilege and your social location in such a way as to recognize what else is in the web and how big the web is and how the web is actually structured at this moment in time, so to speak, to use this terminology. And and then through that to start to dismantle where you're leaned into structures that, for example, one of the interesting things, here's an interesting correlation between kind of social justice, kind of self-interrogation, and spiritual practice. That they say that whiteness, right, is exists in a defense of its demand for comfort and ease. But one of the things that's propping up oppression in the globe is that folks who carry certain kinds of privileges, white privilege, white patriarchal privilege, white privilege, feel they have a right, we could say like a God-given right, or a kind of fundamental and intrinsic right to ease and comfort. And I would say that this is wonderful. It's a great place to start, because ease and comfort are actually, I would say, I don't want to say the enemy of the yoga tradition. That's not enough. It's not fair to quite say it like that. But I would definitely say that none of the kind of real deep awakening work that I've done has been work where I've been able to kind of be like, okay, I'm going to be easy and comfortable now. Now, I want to draw a very sharp line here and say there is such a thing as caring for your nervous system. So it's not like just fry yourself.
Right.
So we are going to have to become pretty sophisticated as we emerge out of our white supremacy meltdown lockdown. We're going to have to become super sophisticated people, actually, because on one hand, there's the tending of the nervous system, you know, and there's great things to learn about that and caring for the vagus nerve and being in the kind of the most creative state. I mean, there's a physiological reality to your creativity, you know, which has to do with the workings of the vagus nerve and so on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kirsty was talking about that on Friday, the vagus nerve we had a talk about relaxation.
Yeah.
And that sounds, that's super important, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think it's wonderful education that you can give yourself, and there are lots of amazing little things that you can do to start to, I think also really good yoga practice, like really true yoga practice is very supportive. It makes you very resilient. I mean, we know stuff, but like, let's be like, okay, so now we're becoming more resilient so that we can withstand more truth. And truth is love. You know, and love is creativity. I mean, to me, it's like really a nested thing. So in terms of making a start, I would say, you know, go out and buy. I mean, this is the thing, everybody on this call has heard it, and I'm going to just get behind it really strong. Get with a gang of people who are similar to you, come from a similar background to you in terms of your social location, and get a copy of Me and White Supremacy by Leila Saad. And do that work so that you start to get some recognition going as to where you're hanging out. And then at the same time, do daily spiritual practice. And think of those things as related. Because they are. I mean, I'm a daily meditator. I chant a lot of mantra. I have a lot of different practices that I do. I teach a lot of these practices. And my entire teaching ministry as far as yoga goes is oriented towards this course that I do called the Practices of Freedom and Well-Being Immersion and the Practice of Leadership and Empowerment Teacher Training. And this is all like, how do we got to install, the whole point is to install daily practice. So I would say, you know, context is one thing. So, okay, we're in a crisis point of the world and I want to understand what this crisis is and get real about it. Yeah. And then the next thing is like, finding support to do that work and then tying it in. And also you need a community. I think the Buddha had it exactly right. You know, like the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is like a really great, this is the 3 jewels of Buddhism. It's an amazing formulation. It kind of says, look, you need a certain kind of energetic reality of awakening in your field. So be critical about the people that you listen to, and listen to people who really have it together and really are practicing awakening in the world right now. And there's a lot of amazing people out there doing that. You need, to kind of, Buddha, we could say also Buddha could be described as like, keep company with the saints. Make sure you've got people who are operating in a slightly, you could maybe even name it for yourself, a slightly more evolved, evolutionary consciousness than you are. They seem to be, you kind of feel like, oh, I don't know if I could quite handle life the way they handle it, but it's interesting and compelling, and they're really doing it. Buddha, and then Dharma. And Dharma is like the ways of awakening. This is our practices and our stories about awakening and our whole, all of the teachings that we get through both yoga, and I would also say through practices of liberation in the way of justice and our humanity at this time. Viewing these 2 things as equally significant to me is like a kind of linchpin for the whole thing. And the final part is Sangha, and Sangha is community. This is what you have here. It's amazing. You just have it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We've got amazing people, all of us supporting each other in this not easy process of self-inquiry and self-observation and looking inwards as to what else is there. And it's lovely to be able to do this. And I think I feel very humbled and privileged to be surrounded by people who are, we're uplifting each other, I think.
Beautiful.
It is wonderful. And I'm very sort of down to earth as well. And I'm also, I'm dying to get some kind of practice nuggets, because Leila, you're one of those people who are, in my mind, I've known you now for many years, and I see you are one of those people who operates on a different level, and one which I couldn't aspire to, but I do. So it would be amazing to just hear some nuggets from you for how we can, those of us who are sort of more in the daily grind or whatever that is. How could
okay, so I can give you I'll give you a selection of options and you can choose which one you maybe you want all of them. I can just give like basic meditation, my kind of top 5 meditation tips.
Oh, this sounds good.
I can also give like tips for like intuitive living. And awakening, kind of like that pulse, because really like our awakening is happening all the time. I mean, it just is whether we're signing up to it or not. And somebody's also said that they want to focus, that the need to focus on the environment. Yeah, absolutely. This is ecology as well as humanity that we're being called to 100%.
Yeah, and Sam is also with me on the bottom rung. Thanks, Sam. I'm glad I'm not alone.
Well, I mean, by the way, we're all on all the rungs.
On the rungs, I like that.
I'm serious. We really are. We can't, like, this is the thing, is we have this like hierarchical ascending view of the whole kind of thing. And I do, like I said, you do want you need people who are operating on frequencies that you're not operating on to support you in some way. But then there's also the understanding that the way that the awakening looks on that person is going to be very different from how awakening looks on you.
Right.
And the other thing that I'm really committed to is awakening is it's evolutionary, which is to say it's a spiral, which is like it goes in a circle, not like straight as a vector, but it also is simply just circular, which is to say, and this goes back to one of the tantric teachings, and I can't get into the details of it. This is 90 minutes worth of basic teaching to get this thing, but one of the things that I share in my freedom and well-being immersion is the truth that we're all, that in our continual expansion, there's some part of us that's always on the bottom rung. Like there's so much of us that there's always some part of us that's always on the bottom rung.
I love that.
And that's great. It's like, it's going to keep everybody humble, and it's going to keep everybody understanding that just because you don't feel like you're in some big expanded consciousness state doesn't mean that a part of your consciousness isn't there. And it's about how does it look on you? How does it, and then what I found so many times, I had so many white male teachers and so many teachers who were, and this is why I make such a big damn fuss about the white supremacy piece and critiquing the white supremacist patriarchal take on spirituality and even yoga, is that because of the lack of criticality, then there were these underpinning ideas of kind of achievement in awakening that I find very, very, very limiting and actually just false in my own direct experience. It just doesn't seem like that. That awakening, and also fundamentally, I think awakening is a collective thing. So even if you don't think of yourself as being on the bottom rung, a part of you that's maybe not your body is definitely in the bottom rung. So we're in it together. So in terms of that kind of visioning, I mean, I think that's important.
And I love this. Okay, Sam, sorry. I mean, you're deeply creative, but operate from knowing nothing to shift forward. How Leila's work can help me take it off the mat, which is what, yes, I think you're right. That is what Leila's trying to do and does so well. Absolutely.
I mean, I think the tender. Okay, so just to say again, like really get with the book. Leila Saad is just one resource. There's also Nova Reed. She runs incredible courses. It's time now to get into that work. 100%. Let the anti-racism lead you around the place. Let it lead you into your critique of all of the. We gotta recognize power structures, how they are mutually reinforcing, and how we are complicit with the power structures, so that we can then start to make like kind of really daily choices to start to pull our complicity and our pull that away. By the way, that's going to give you so much energy back for your creativity and your spiritual practice. It's like if your life is not about like having to uphold this system that is disenfranchising most likely you and definitely everybody else, then how much more energy do you have to put towards awakening? How much more appealing and compelling is awakening? So there's that piece, right? Education, Nova Reed, Leila Saad, many other people.
Would you be able to put some links on here or send them to me so that I can,
yes.
Leila,
Yes,
for the Nova Reed?
I mean, this is, and you're going to have to get everybody who starts to do this work. I'm going to encourage you, if you're carrying white privilege, if you feel that you are in a more, I'm just going to call it a more naive place with regard to what these things are. Be very circumspect. Don't go around asking folks who don't carry white privilege to do resources for you.
Right.
I'm happy to do it because I'm a teacher in this community, and this is part of my commitment here in support of Movement for Modern Life.
Thank you.
But you got to turn up for the Nadia talk with Kat later this week. Like you kind of start to tune into that and make that a part of your daily practice. So that's one level. And then the other level is just the most important thing, maybe just about simply the meditation. How many is everybody meditating with this?
Well, it's interesting to know. Let me know, guys. Are you meditators? I'd love to know, because we're offering the daily yoga practices. And I know that meditation practices is something that some of you have been doing. You've been doing yoga nidra. A lot of people here have been doing yoga nidra, and that's very meditative. But who here meditates daily? I don't manage to.
Okay, so I will lovingly challenge you, Kat, to initiate daily meditation practice.
Okay.
And to hold that as a container right underneath the entire structure of Movement for Modern Life. Yeah. Okay. So that's a challenge, but I think that you'll find that there's a real vibrational anchoring in your own committed daily side. There's all kinds of things you can do. There's so many people who can guide, kind of tow you in there. I think that time to do nothing but just actually get with, I call meditation getting with yourself. It's like, okay, we're going to just get with ourselves. That's it. That's what we're doing now. We're getting with ourselves. And that's so different because there's nothing else to do, and it's okay. By the way, no shame, right? Like everything's cool. No shame. But like the big thing that started to kind of like become my entire creativity practice in some ways is founded on the fact that I'm able to just sit there and get with myself every day. And it's not a big deal. It's really no big deal. Mostly it's like actually being with what I actually am like all the time. Like it's it is like, there's so many things I could say about meditation. I'm going to say a few things, my top tips. Meditation is not the opposite of thinking. I'm so sorry to say that because everybody wants to stop thinking.
That's right.
I love you so much. You're never going to stop thinking. It's not a thing. I mean, it doesn't matter. It also has nothing to do with it. It's about our habits of what we're able to tune into. We have an incredibly vast field of being to tune into. And are we able to cultivate habits that allow us to tune in consciously, to move skillfully between the kind of fields and to kind of really tune into the dimensions of reality that include thought but are not limited to thought. And by the way, all the creativity is not inside your mental framework, like the story you're telling yourself about reality. The creativity is in the spaces between the words you utter. It's in the space that surrounds everything that's currently happening. Everything that's about to happen is there present in the space around everything that's happening right now and inside what's happening right now. So it's like, well, how do I just kind of on a practical level, like get in touch with that? So that meditation both points us in that direction, but it also allows us to get with all of one of the words that can be used, and we'll just use this word from the Western tradition, is neurosis. Like all of our kind of resistance to being exactly who we are. All of our agitation about being alive. Through meditation, for example, I got in touch with my profound self-loathing. I couldn't be free until I was free enough to live right in the heart of my own self-loathing instead of in a denial or resistance to it. Now let's just think about wellness culture and what we're doing in yoga, and how does the yoga helping us to get intimate with our self-loathing, or is the yoga helping us to deny, resist, and fear it more? This is just an example. So this is, to me, meditation, operates in this way, to really let us kind of get with ourselves. And in that sense, it's just incredible. Every single day, just here I am. Here's, it's the cat show every day. And it always is. And it's never going to be anything else as long as you're breathing. But it's like, how can you be like so deep inside the cat show that it's just animated, like you recognize that the cat show is the show of all life, and you can just flow with it, man. Just like flow with every one of its movements,
Oh, that's grand. I love it. I love this question from Sam. How does Leila take her meditation perspective out into daily life? How does that look and feel?
Well, one of the things is that I'm constantly paying attention to attention itself. So like meditation is so it's not a perspective, it's just the truth of the space that's around everything is always around everything. And the compelling, how do I put it this way? Like my attention is like not more present in meditation than it is at any other moment. So then it's like I always think of it as I got one foot inside my awareness itself, and then the other foot inside all of the contents of awareness. Right? So that's an important recognition. We could say, okay, well, here's all this stuff. Like I look around, there's this English channel, there's the plant, there's cat in the video screen, there's the da-da, right? This is all the contents. And we're really used to, this is the kind of one of the shifts of perception that I think is really like a kind of useful one for spiritual practice, is that instead of paying so much attention to the contents, because when we pay too much, we pay all of our attention into the contents of awareness and none into the awareness that's kind of spaciously inside and all around everything that we're paying attention to, then it can kind of calcify and harden all of the contents of awareness. So the contents of awareness seem a lot more juicy, buoyant, dreamlike, mutable when we pay a little bit more attention to awareness itself. I hope that's helpful for Sam. I mean, it's really like you're aware that I'm talking, you're hearing the sound of my voice. What is the awareness itself? Can you both pay attention to what I'm saying and also the awareness that's aware of it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that listening voice, isn't it? So it's always confused me a little bit because if there's cat listening to the listener who is the other one anyway, it's like there are these two things.
Yeah. But there's like the master thing is the attentiveness, like what's paying attention, the paying attentionness is another way. Maybe we call it like that. Like, okay, there's paying attentionness in there. I point my paying attentionness here at this, but now I'm going to point it someplace else. But it's still there. It's still like, no matter how I point it, it's a metacognition. Someone's saying, yes, metacognition is another way is another phrasing of this. That one is like that, like that's one of those like subtle muscles that you can build. It's actually a thing you can do is to pay attention to it. And it'll start to key my experiences and experience of some of my students and colleagues and fellow web weavers is that it's then that starts to like kind of just make it a lot harder to fixate and to kind of lock down into our ideas about things. And the less locked in we are to our ideas about things, in my opinion, the more available we are to the direct moment-to-moment unfolding experience of reality.
That makes perfect sense. And then the more locked in we'll be able to be to this sovereignty, the thing that we were talking about at the beginning. That makes sense. Oh, Sam, it's such a clear explanation, Leila, that I am seeing that you're aware of wider things around you, and therefore that shows me that you understand and appreciate the power in pointing out our interconnection.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
This is the
Yeah,
safe
that
space
makes
everybody's always arising into as well. All the other peoples are in that space. Everybody's in awareness. None of like cat. I'll never know a cat that's not inside my awareness. There's no cat. I mean, this is one of the kind of the rudiments I would say of tantric yoga is kind of orienting yourself to life in a non-objectifying way. So instead of saying like cat's an object out there and Leila's over here, you kind of say, no, there's awareness, which is seemingly radiating out of the center of me in some mysterious way. And cat is inside the awareness.
inside your awareness.
And then it's like, and then if you guys can play with this as much as you want because it's kind of a fun kind of mental game.
Yeah, that is. That's a great mental game. That it's that thing of the thing not really existing.
Well, it's like you'll never step into your own shadow.
Yeah.
You know, it's like but your shadow's always with you. So it's a little bit, it has that kind of a texture to it. So, and then, of course, this is the thing is it can get a little kind of, I don't want to say arid, but it can get really spacious. Like the element of space can feel kind of present in that kind of awareness. Then that's why that tying it down into the way the world is right now, every single person is so called to heart, to the truth of the heart, which is in our interconnectedness, which is in, I mean, that's when I say, meditation, when you really get with yourself, it's a lot easier to be compassionate for other humans because you're just like really bearing your own witness. Super look at other people and get with them. It's like we got to get with those people. And then, there's loads of other, dimensions. I mean, if you want to get super magical about it, you can start to get into the devotion of the Divine Mother and the devotion, really practicing an activated devotion to life, which is what I also see as right at the very heart of the tantric tradition and of the yoga traditions that I'm initiated to, or let's say related to. Initiation makes it sound like I have some special deal. Like I've entered into communion. That communion has been formalized in particular ways, but it's also just simply like the profundity of my own intention. And I guess that would be another thing is to say like, just, as you, like if you're calling yourself a bottom runger, then you can just say like, well, I'm just always going to be in the game of refining my intention.
I like this. I'm always going to be a bottom runger. But I like that too, because we did have a talk from Andrea about intention, and I've been aware of the power of strong intentionality, that it really changes everything.
Yeah.
So that's something that I definitely like to play with. But again, keeping that as a daily practice, which is, I feel, something that you're doing here, Leila. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize the significance of dailiness more. I mean, it's like whole thing for me. And I'm also very, freewheeling with it. Like I go through periods where it's a very like fixed, rigid sadhana. I go through periods where it's like, I don't even know. I just sit there and I look at my altar. My altar's back here behind me. And I just sit there and I'm like, I don't even kind of know what to do with myself. It's amazing how easily we forget. I mean, and one of the things I like about the tantric tradition is how like it has so many teachings about forgetfulness that it kind of like gets you really intimate with your forgetfulness, and then you see like how easy it is to forget the point. To just get lost in the worlds and the realms of your thinking mind and of transaction and of your imagination and all of that stuff. And it's a kind of like just one little tether. Daily habit tether. Yeah, dailiness is I recommend very strongly.
Okay. So for very basic dailiness, we're talking the daily meditation. That's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage you with so much love.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful thing. So it's going to be the daily meditation. And what other, because I have a daily yoga practice. What other daily practices? Journaling is something that I've been playing with. I don't do it every day, but it's something I've been doing recently now for this retreat, and it's something which has been useful in life. Is that something that you do as well?
I've never been a great journaler.
Oh, interesting.
I do love to write.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really like to journal.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I do practice is like I have a deep practice of spiritual contemplation. So, and this is you know, a little bit inspired. And one of my, I think that's not me. Good. There's one of the threads of my practice comes through the mystic Christian tradition and contemplative practice through that. I got a lot of different threads that have been inspired me in my life and spirit. And this is also something that I teach kind of as a fundamental thing in my freedom and well-being immersion is kind of like living into questions, like really kind of pulsing with like really asking the question, making time and space to ask the questions and starting to really ask yourself, what is it that you really want to know? You know? Because if you start to live in, so there's like a pulse to it. There's like a heartbeat. What you really want to know, what you long to know. Longing is so powerful also in spiritual practice. Like, okay, so there's a heartbeat to it. And so I like, instead of using journaling, which some people also use both to get with themselves and also to kind of like, you know, clear the deck, so many different uses for journaling. I tend to sit and contemplate. Now I have the sea there, and I go down there and I just sort of lay there and have revelations. It's like amazing. And that's also a very priestessy thing. You know, you go and you sit with your back to a tree, for example, and then you ask the questions, you go and you sit with the tree and then see what the answers are.
That's what Mimi was telling us about as well. That's something that she asks trees questions, and it's something that I'm a real nature person. I love to sit in nature, and I think asking nature questions and being very intentional with just the natural world and us in the natural world.
Big, huge, massive. And this is part. Somebody was talking about the kind of ecological let's call it the ecological revolution that we're undergoing right now. Like the kind of, you know, the incapacity to go forward in the way that we're going forward. This level of the awakening, to me, the kind of, this is a part, you know, the kind of communion and I mean, whispering your secrets to the earth, you know, making little pouches and burying them in the earth and letting the earth hold things for you. I mean, all these practices that are sort of like connected to spell casting and ritual magic, these are all so powerful. And for gaining insight, right? Because it's also like, in order to do the awakening, I mean, the way that awakening unfolds is through a pattern of insight into the nature of reality, into the nature of the way things really are. So yeah, big fan. I like to lay like that. I like to face plant on the earth. And you can also ask the sky, by the way. You don't have to, you know, even if you're in the city, you're like, you know, you can ask the sky to, you know, ask there. You can ask. I had a practice for years because I only just moved out of London. They call it the one tree practice, and I made offerings to the tree. I used to go and make out with the tree. I mean, I honestly was like making out, like actually kissing this tree. I mean, it was really. But you can make a real, and yes, the trees do answer, don't they? They really do. There's so many things that we can do in support.
I love that. And I know that what you have done here has really, it's been the very start of a very big conversation for a lot of us, which is wonderful. And I'd love it if you'd be able to put in the details of the freedom and well-being practices immersion that you do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how it's the post-COVID immersion is like a real fascinating subject, but I run it every year. It's also the first half of my 200-hour yoga teacher training. So, but you can do it as a standalone course. And also, but what I do have a thing coming up that's more on the ritual side that doesn't have the asanas, although there's some movement. And that's called Vessel of Worth. And that is, I'll put all the links to my things that I'm up to and people can hang out.
Yeah, please do, because I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are really fascinated by these practices. The other thing I wanted to say, because we talked about at the beginning, the intelligence of our bodies and how much our bodies really know, and if we're able to tune into that. And you have done an intelligent body series on Movement to One Life. You did that a while back, and I'm going to put links to that. And actually, my class later on today is going to be a class from that series because I've now become re-inspired.
That's great. I do
this.
need to name that the intelligent body is more in the biomechanical intelligence of body of the kind of bony structures. So it's not really that intelligence of like the living, unfolding, moment to moment experiential body truth.
I see.
Just to be really clear of what levels, because we're talking about multiple levels of intelligence. One is just like how bones fit together, how movement is facilitated through these bones, how connective tissue can how an awareness of connective tissue can just free us and allow us to be easier in our body. There's all kinds of levels to it.
Interesting. Cool. No, I think that's that's a good clarification. This is about the biomechanical, physical tissues and bones intelligence. Cool.
Yeah. I know we need to do some more filming. It's about like
we do.
Yeah, we'll do some more so that I'll get some of the way that I'm practicing. I mean, I've almost codified this thing that I call the liquid awakening in the classes over quarantine, which is really helping people to move from the fluid structures of their body and to recognize the weight-bearing capacity of the fluid dense structures of the body, and not moving so much through the mechanical dimension of bone to bone in that relationship, but finding more of the kind of like the actual, like the way that hydrostatic pressure functions in the body. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to it. So we'll plan to get that stuff in the can.
Yay, thank you. I know that there'll be a lot of people very, very, very happy to have more practices with you, Leila.
Yeah.
So thank you. No, that's great. And of course, for me, it's just, I've got like the perfect job because I get to practice with most amazing people and have these like mind-blowing conversations. I'm going to be, ruminating on this, having some self-contemplation, nature contemplation, putting this stuff into life. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you very much to all of you for offering what your thoughts are on this, because again, it's not easy sometimes to just type things into the wilderness and not know where it's going to go. So we really appreciate your, just being open and being up for the process, right? That's important. So thank you. Yeah. And thank you so much, Leila, for your time.
Oh, it's my honor. And I would love to close just with a reiteration of what a difference you really can make and how to interact with this moment in time. Please, interrogate your privilege. Please take it on and know that is a practice that is an awakening practice. Mm-hmm. We do the meditation so that we can come into relationship with the way that reality really is. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, it's, this is a time where we really can make a profound collective shift. I do believe that is what all of this stuff for many, many years has been pointing to. So as we make this great shift, we're at the very end of the Kali Yuga. Some of you guys know this, and then we're moving into the Sattva Yuga. Life is really different. And each one of us is really called to lay our body down to facilitate this movement. It's very profound, and I really honor each one of you to show up in that. I both call you to show up in that and also deeply honor it's easy to forget in daily life how profound what we're doing really is.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Every creature that lives and breathes in the future is going to be laying on your body and on the imprints that your body left on this earth. That's the truth for all of us. So what a profound opportunity and what profound joy I take in knowing that I can open my heart and really live in a way that is dedicated to ending structures that hurt and harm, and really, really taking those structures of harm apart in a deep and meaningful way. I just really encourage everybody.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that final thought, Leila. Yes. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. All right, guys, take care.
Blessings, everyone. Blessings of love. Bye. Bye.